Have you ever picked up a book hoping that you'll like it, but you're really a little nervous that maybe you won't? This was one of those books, but it was such a pleasant surprise. It's so good, you guys. Welcome to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy, mostly science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. Today it's fantasy. Today it is BookTube's own Tori Tecken. She wrote another book. It's called The Bloodstones. She sent me an e-arc of it, which was very nice of her. And so I got to read it before release. And it's the shit. It's the first book in a planned trilogy called The Legends of the Bruhai, or just Legends of the Bruhai. There's going to be a trilogy after it, probably, also. This is the first book. It's not out yet. It comes out in paperback and ebook on November 28th, so very soon you can get it in your hot little hands. There's also a planned audiobook coming after that. It's probably a good idea to say that Tori is one of, if not my best, BookTube friend. We have had a lot to do with each other. We've been on each other's channels. We've chatted a lot. We text pretty regularly. And I wish nothing more than for her book to be a huge, raving success. However, as usual, I'm not going to lie to you about a book. If I didn't like it, I would not have reviewed it. If I didn't like it as much as I did, I would not say so. So just there's the disclaimer out of the way. Let us ask ourselves, what's it got? Brother shit, warrior school, bloodthirsty girls, plains tribesmen, mostly gentle giants, interesting cultures, scary masks, exciting bloody fights, a cool map, time jumps, a brutal world, quite a lot of murder, ugly politics, runes, lost magic, and tasty sweets. So what's going on in the Bloodstones? What is the story? It begins with three brothers witnessing a pretty damn brutal execution. The guy being executed has been accused. Seems like he did actually do it. He murdered the crown prince, the son of the king, the only heir, the only son of the king, and is being brutally murdered for it. It takes off from there. For the first third, about third, I think, of the book, it mostly has to do with Gerin. Gerin is the third son, the youngest son of the right hand of the king, Counselor Hallex. And Gerin is, being the youngest son, he's not in line for anything. He's seems like a nice kid. He is 11, I think, when the book starts. And it's not really much of a spoiler to say because it happens in chapter 2, but he gets spirited away. I won't go into details, but he gets spirited away to a warrior school where he and other boys his age are being trained to be badass bodyguard assassins or something. It's very unpleasant where they are. And a lot of the story, until near the end, a lot of the story that focuses on Gerin focuses on his training there and the challenges he has to overcome, the sometimes horrible things that are done to him and that he is forced to do. It's pretty extreme and unpleasant. The other story, or thread of the story, follows Sindri. Sindri is a young woman, also about Garen's age, a bit older, I think, who is a warrior in a tribe. The area where they are, it's called Malak, is a whole bunch of tribes that are kind of constantly at war, or at least sharing unpleasantries with each other. And she is a hot-headed badass. She makes a lot of stupid decisions, but she is also pretty damn cool. And her tribe is heading into trouble, which hits them maybe in the middle of the book. So a lot of the story is basically just the two of them coming of age. But at the same time, the whole thing is sort of happening in an atmosphere of intrigue and politics between the three main areas that are in the book. That is Katesh, which is where Garen and his family live in the city of Keld, and Malak, where the tribesmen are. And then there's another kingdom which is sort of in between the two called Rook, or Rak. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But small, rich kingdom, also quite civilized, cities, technology, that kind of thing. And then the less civilized tribesmen in Malak. It's obviously a setup book. There's a very strong feeling that it's going somewhere, that it's putting a lot of things in places, as is kind of typical in the first book in the trilogy. And there are also a couple of other characters that come in later. Garen's oldest brother, Zario, becomes more relevant and starts to become a POV character later in the book. And another character who I won't name or explain anything about because it would be kind of spoilery. The whole thing in a lot of ways is very character focused. So it's a lot about the developments that they're going through, the challenges they're overcoming. For the first half of the book, there isn't that much of a story, like a plot. It's very much driven by the characters. They get put in these situations that they're in and they develop. But the writing is so good that it's actually very, very entertaining and engaging to watch them do that. So that is very, very cool. In the last half of the book, a lot more starts happening. Some other characters come in and it starts moving in a more maybe plot-driven kind of direction. The world is interesting, and I would say, or at least to me, this almost seems like a bit of a trend. Hi, it's Editing Matt. My brain was obviously all over the place when I recorded that. I started to, but never finished saying that it seems to be a trend in fantasy that I'm noticing right now, creating a secondary world that isn't historical, but feels somehow historical and relatively realistic and not too wildly fantastic. And it's something I've seen, for example, in The Way of Dawn by Philip Chase, and also in The Severing Sun by Yvonne Roycroft. That's it. Back to the video. It feels obvious that Tori was going for a somewhat historical feeling. The regions and the cultures that we see in the book, there's mainly three. Really, there's mainly two. There's Katesh, which, as I said, is more of a established, civilized, big cities kind of a culture. And it has a very Japanese crossed with Arabian feeling. To me, it did anyway. There's a lot of writing with brushes, and the names of a lot of things sound to me Arabic, but a lot of the clothing that's described and like I said, the calligraphy and that kind of thing feels very Japanese. The other region, the other main region in the story is Malak, which sounds like it's mostly a relatively undeveloped plains area. With a lot of tribes that have been nomadic but have settled in place. Not that long ago, though, a few generations ago. And they're very tied to their horses, and they have tribal tattooing and that kind of thing. And they're on either side, more or less, of a kingdom called Rook. Rook is basically, it sounds like a big mine. There is a hell of a lot of gold and jewels and that kind of thing that Rook can mine. So it's the richest place, but it's also pretty small. So they are paying homage and paying tribute every year to Katesh. There's also some hinting at other species or humanoid intelligent species. There's the Tecken Islanders. There's an island in the southwest, which is not really discussed or shown really directly in the book, but one of the characters is from there, and he's basically an albino. He doesn't have red eyes, but he's extremely pale. He has extremely white hair and skin. He's extremely agile and fast, but it's only sort of hinted at. So this is one of the things that for me really sinks a hook in. When I start hearing little interesting bits in a book that aren't totally laid out on the table, like here's everything. And there's a lot of that with the different races or species. So there's the Tecken Islanders. There's the Dahamians. Daham is a kingdom in the east, which we don't see at all, and we only see one Dahamian. They seem to be darker skinned, really, really big, and kind of gentle giant kind of people. And there's a mention that their kingdom is very creative arts and crafts and music and creative endeavors are a really big thing in Daham. There's also one Keral. The Keral are basically giant, mostly gentle, minotaur-ish creatures. Intelligent, they can speak. There is one of them in the book, and he's a really interesting character. But again, it's kind of one of those, it shows some interesting things, but it doesn't lay it all out on the table for you. So I'm really looking forward to getting more of all of them in the second and third book. Also, this is fantasy, so of course we should talk about magic. In the beginning of the book, I thought, oh, okay, there isn't any magic. It feels like a very swords and doing things physically and that kind of world. And over a period of time in the book, you realize that magic has been lost or has died out or something has happened. There used to be magic. Maybe it used to be common. And it's being rediscovered in ways which I won't go into because spoilers. But there is magic in the world. It has to do with the runes, but it's dormant or lost or forgotten or something. And we don't exactly learn in this book how. There are a lot of interesting themes in this book. One of the big ones, I would say, is and I was thinking about what to call it, means and ends. The question of when what means justify what ends. Is it worth doing some really horrible things for a good cause or for a noble motivation? Or is it maybe better not to treat people that horribly? There's one particular character in here that everyone I've talked to unanimously wanted to punch in the throat. But there's also a hint the whole time that maybe he's doing this for good reasons, not selfish reasons at least. It's not so clear what his motivation is. There's also a lot about family, obviously, because we've got Sindri, the plainswoman, the warrior from the tribe, and she has a sister that she's very close to. She has her parents, who are the chief and chieftainess. They essentially are the heads of her tribe, and her little brother. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on with her family. Likewise, in Katesh, there is our main character, Garen. There's his oldest brother, Zario, who comes into the book later. They have a middle brother, and their mother's dead, but their father is this high-powered politician, right hand of the king. And it's really interesting to see how these two families manipulate each other, use and abuse each other. The people within the families, how very close and loving in some ways they can be, and how that can all go to hell pretty quickly. Some really interesting stuff to think about in there with family. Coming of age, obviously, we've got two characters who are pre-teen or low teen years. And there are a couple of jumps in the book. There are 2 3-year jumps. So we start out with Garen, he's 11, then he's 14, then he's 17 by the end of the book. And the very, very different, but very, very challenging experiences that both Garen and Sindri go through are enough to break most people. I would think, like I said, it's a brutal world and bloody. But they both go through a lot of challenges and have to step up, grow up, start thinking about their own responsibilities, the consequences of their actions, that kind of thing. So that's a big one. And then the last one, I've mentioned that some horrible things happen to lots of people. Trauma is a big thing. There's a lot of There's a lot of traumatic things that do happen to people or that have happened in the past. And it's interesting. It feels like a question throughout the book, like how much does that make them who they are? How much can they overcome that and step beyond it and be something better? How much do they give into it and continue to do stupid or horrible things? That kind of stuff. It's a book that makes you think. So let's talk about the cover. First of all, I would like to say wraparound covers for the win. Tori's close friend, Sarah Ferrari, did the cover, the layout, and the map. So she's obviously a talented lady. As you can see, the cover's pretty. It's got a really gorgeous illustration, which goes all the way around the whole thing. I haven't had a physical copy in my hands. I read it like this, where obviously the cover doesn't look nearly as good as it could. I'm looking forward to having a physical one in my hands soon. But with a full color wraparound, which has on the back a bit of an illustration of one of the places in the book. On the front, characters, interestingly enough, that we don't really get to know until the end of the book, at least not as they are shown on the front. But obviously the main character, Garen, is standing right in the front of the group. And when you get a bit towards the end of the book, what's on the front cover makes a lot of sense. The typography is nice because there is a big thing, especially in Katesh, the kingdom that Garen is from. There's a lot about calligraphy, about writing runes or drawing runes, painting runes, I guess, with a brush. And we've got a very brushstroke kind of typography here. It's called the Bloodstones. There's quite a lot of blood in it, so red painting at the top. And Tori's name, nice and big, down the bottom. Slightly 3D. It feels a little, that would be maybe my only criticism of it, is the 3D-ish typography at the bottom. Feels out of place. Everything else is kind of flat. The brushstroke calligraphy style of typography above it is quite flat. And the name is kind of, looks like it's meant to be kind of popping out. Doesn't really fit 100%. But other than the cover, there's also this gorgeous map. All, like I said, done by Sarah Ferrari. And it's just a gorgeous book. I'm looking forward to actually having a physical one in my hot little hands. One last thing, I am doing an interview with Tori on November 24th, so pretty soon. We will be talking primarily about her as an author, not as a booktuber, and this book, and her plans for the trilogy and the ongoing 2 trilogies that are eventually meant to be, and so on and so forth. We will be doing it live, so you're welcome to join. There's a link down in the description to the upcoming live stream. Please do join us. I'm sure you picked it up by now. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm a little hungry for the second one. As soon as I finished reading the arc, I texted Tori and said, when's the second one coming out? I think she is trying to get it done next year, 2024. It will be called The Queen's Wolf. And it will no doubt be awesome as well. So I highly recommend, not just because Tori's a friend, but because this is a good book, I highly recommend you go get it on November 28th when it comes out. I hope you're reading awesome books like The Bloodstone. I hope you are well, as usual. And I will see you next time.